she said, "I'm having fun without you tonight. Don't contact me until tomorrow." I stayed silent, but when she returned expecting me at home, she discovered who was actually there for her. Some situations require professional assessment, and after 4 years with Megan, I'd learned to recognize when something didn't add up. I'm Tyler, 31, cybersecurity consultant specializing in corporate fraud detection, and I live with Megan in our shared condo in Phoenix where we've been building what I thought was a solid relationship. That Thursday evening changed everything when she announced her plans with the kind of precision that immediately triggered my analytical instincts. "I'm going to a wine tasting event in Scottsdale tomorrow with Ashley, Brittany, and Caitlin," she said, checking her reflection in our hallway mirror while applying lipstick with the careful attention of someone preparing for something important. "It's going to be a late night, probably won't end until after midnight, so I'm just going to crash at Ashley's place afterward." The request itself wasn't unusual, but her next words were, "Oh, and Tyler? Don't contact me at all tomorrow night. I want to have fun without worrying about checking my phone or feeling obligated to update you constantly. Just give me this one night to be completely free." I looked up from my laptop where I'd been reviewing security protocols for a client. Free from what exactly? You know what I mean. Sometimes it feels like I can't breathe without you wanting to know where I am, who I'm with, what I'm doing. Ashley keeps saying that healthy relationships require independence, and I think she's right. Ashley, the recently divorced party girl who'd been encouraging Megan to live her best life since her own marriage imploded 6 months ago. Ashley, who posted Instagram stories from expensive restaurants and exclusive events despite working a basic administrative job. Ashley, who seemed to have unlimited funds for designer clothes and weekend getaways. "I've never demanded constant updates," I said carefully. "I ask because I care about your safety and because that's what partners do." See? That's exactly what I mean. You turn everything into some kind of relationship lecture. Can't you just say, "have fun," and leave it at that? The edge in her voice was new, defensive in a way that made my professional instincts kick into high gear. When people get defensive about transparency, there's usually a reason. "Have fun," I said simply, returning to my screen. "Thanks. I knew you'd understand once I explained it properly." She kissed my forehead, grabbed her overnight bag that seemed unusually packed for a single evening, and headed for the door. "Love you, see you Saturday morning." Saturday morning. She'd initially said tomorrow night, then extended it to Saturday morning. The timeline kept expanding, another red flag in what was becoming a collection. After the door closed, I sat in our living room listening to her car pull out of the complex parking garage, processing what had just happened. In 4 years together, Megan had never requested complete communication blackout. Even during her bachelorette weekend in Vegas, she'd sent photos and called before bed. Even during her solo trip to visit her sister in Denver, we talked daily. But now she needed to be completely free for 48 hours, and her 3 enabler friends were involved. Ashley, whose divorce settlement had supposedly left her financially comfortable but whose spending patterns suggested other income sources. Brittany, the wannabe influencer with 12,000 followers who somehow afforded luxury lifestyle content on her retail job salary. Caitlin, the quiet banker who'd recently started wearing expensive jewelry and driving a car well above her pay grade. Megan's friend group had always made me uncomfortable, not because they disliked me, but because they constantly pushed narratives about male control and female independence that seemed designed to create relationship conflict. "Tyler's sweet, but don't you feel suffocated sometimes?" Ashley had asked Megan at dinner last month, right in front of me. "Most guys his age want to lock you down and make you dependent on them." The comment had bothered me because it was completely inaccurate. I'd encouraged Megan's career advancement, supported her decision to go back to school for her master's degree, and never once tried to limit her social activities or independence. But Ashley's words seemed to plant seeds of doubt that grew stronger each time they got together. Now Megan was requesting complete communication silence, and my cybersecurity background was screaming that people only demand absolute privacy when they're doing something they know their partner wouldn't approve of. I'd spent my career identifying patterns of deception in corporate environments, recognizing when legitimate activities got disguised as something else, And this situation had all the hallmarks of coordinated misdirection. The wine tasting excuse, the extended timeline, the defensive reaction to basic questions, the influence of friends whose own lifestyles didn't match their stated income sources. Time to do what I do best: investigate. I started with the basics, the same methodical approach I used for corporate fraud cases. First, I verified the wine tasting event Megan mentioned at the Scottsdale venue she'd named. 20 minutes of research revealed no such event scheduled for that weekend, no wine tasting advertisements, no social media promotion, nothing. The venue's event calendar showed a private corporate party Friday night, but it was listed as invitation only with no public access. Strike one. Next, I analyzed her friends' digital footprints, starting with their most recent social media activity. Ashley had posted an Instagram story 6 hours earlier showing her getting a manicure with the caption, "Getting ready for tomorrow night." But the location tag showed a high-end salon in Paradise Valley, not somewhere you'd go for a casual wine tasting. Brittany had shared a photo of an expensive dress with tags still on it, captioned, "Investment piece for special occasions," and the price tag visible in the background showed $800, far beyond her retail salary budget. Caitlin, usually the most private of the group, had posted a rare selfie wearing diamond earrings I'd never seen before with the simple caption, "Feeling grateful." The metadata told a different story than their captions suggested. Using tools from my professional toolkit, I traced the geolocation data from their recent posts and discovered a pattern that made my stomach drop. All 3 women had been at identical coordinates multiple times over the past 2 months, coordinates that traced to a private marina in Lake Havasu, not Scottsdale wine country. The marina's website showed luxury yacht rentals and private party hosting, with packages starting at $15,000 per event. Cross-referencing the marina's public records, I found the yacht most frequently docked there belonged to Havasu Maritime Holdings, registered under David Chin, a businessman whose name triggered recognition from recent financial news. Chin owned a portfolio company that had been investigated for questionable business practices, though no charges had been filed. His social media showed photos from exclusive parties aboard his yacht, always featuring beautiful women in expensive clothes, with captions about networking events and business development opportunities. The guest manifests for Chen's yacht parties, accessible through maritime safety records, revealed a disturbing pattern. The same rotation of young women appeared at multiple events, but they weren't listed as employees or legitimate business associates. They were classified as entertainment consultants, a designation that made my professional alarm bells ring loudly. Megan's name appeared on 3 different manifests over the past 2 months, listed as promotional marketing specialist, despite having no marketing background or business relationship with Chen's companies. Ashley, Brittany, and Caitlin were also regular attendees, all listed with vague job descriptions that didn't match their actual employment. But the detail that made everything click into place was the financial component. Chen's business operated through a network of shell companies that provided consulting fees to women who attended his events, payments that appeared legitimate on paper but followed patterns consistent with money laundering operations I'd investigated in corporate settings. The amounts weren't huge, typically between $2,000 and $5,000 per event, but they explained how Megan's friends had suddenly acquired expensive lifestyles without corresponding career advancement. Megan had been receiving payments too, disguised as income from freelance marketing work she'd never mentioned to me. Bank records, accessible through financial databases I used for fraud investigation, showed regular deposits to her account from Chen's subsidiary companies, totaling almost $30,000 over 4 months. When I confronted the timeline with her work schedule, every girl's night out, and friend emergency that had kept her away overnight corresponded exactly with Chen's yacht party dates. She hadn't been building female friendships or exploring independence. She'd been attending exclusive parties hosted by a businessman who paid young women to entertain his guests, and she'd been lying about it for months while accepting money that she'd hidden from our joint financial planning. The wine tasting story was just the latest cover story in a pattern of deception that had been happening right under my nose, funded by a man whose business practices were questionable enough to warrant federal attention. The deeper I dug, the more complex the web of lies became, extending far beyond Chen's yacht parties into territory that made my professional instincts scream danger. Cross-referencing phone records through legitimate investigative channels revealed that Megan had been in regular contact with someone whose number traced back to Jake Morrison, her ex-boyfriend from college who she'd claimed was emotionally manipulative and controlling. According to Megan's version of their relationship history, Jake had been possessive and demanding, ultimately driving her away with his need to control every aspect of her life. She'd painted him as a cautionary tale about toxic masculinity, someone she'd learned important lessons from about what she'd never tolerate in future relationships. But the call logs told a different story, showing consistent communication between them for the past 6 months, including hour-long conversations that occurred during times when she told me she was working late or spending quiet evenings with friends. Audio analysis of background noise from Ashley's Instagram stories, using software I employed for corporate surveillance investigations, confirmed Jake's voice at Chen's yacht parties. He wasn't just coincidentally present, he was actively participating in whatever business Chen was conducting on these floating entertainment venues. Further investigation revealed that Jake worked as a real estate developer whose company had recently secured several major contracts through Chen's business network, suggesting their relationship wasn't romantic nostalgia but professional collaboration. The financial records painted an even more disturbing picture. Chen's maritime company had business dealings with Jake's development firm, specifically involving luxury resort properties that required environmental impact waivers and zoning exceptions. The same young women who attended Chen's yacht parties also appeared at Jake's real estate marketing events, listed as promotional staff but paid through the same shell company structure that disguised their true compensation sources. Megan had been receiving payments not just for attending Chen's parties, but for participating in Jake's business presentations, essentially serving as attractive decoration for investors who were being sold real estate developments that might not meet legal requirements. The consulting fees in her bank account corresponded with both yacht events and real estate presentations, meaning she'd been working for both men while lying to me about her involvement with either. But the timeline revealed the most devastating truth. This arrangement had been ongoing for months before she'd started creating distance in our relationship. Every argument about independence, every complaint about feeling suffocated, every suggestion from her friends about my controlling behavior had been manufactured to justify the secret life she was already living. The woman who'd accused me of being possessive had been conducting a months-long deception involving her ex-boyfriend, a questionable businessman, and a network of other women who were essentially being paid to attend exclusive events under false pretenses. Voice analysis of her phone calls with Jake revealed intimate conversations that went far beyond professional collaboration, discussing their shared future plans and her frustration with having to maintain appearances in our relationship. "Tyler's getting suspicious about my schedule," she'd said during one recorded call. "Maybe it's time to create some space so I can transition more naturally." "Give it another month," Jake had responded. "Once the Henderson project gets approved, we'll have enough to make the move permanent. Just keep him calm until then." They weren't just rekindling romance. They were planning her exit strategy from our relationship while she continued to benefit from our shared living expenses and my emotional support. I'd been subsidizing her lifestyle while she built a secret business relationship with her ex-boyfriend, accepting money from potentially illegal activities, and preparing to leave me once their financial situation became stable enough. The manipulation was comprehensive and calculated, involving not just Megan but her entire friend group who'd been encouraging relationship conflict while participating in the same deceptive activities. Every girls' night, every conversation about independence, every suggestion that I was too controlling had been part of a coordinated effort to prepare me for her eventual departure while she secured alternative income sources and rekindled her relationship with someone she'd claimed to despise. Armed with comprehensive evidence of the deception, I shifted from investigation mode to strategic response, applying the same methodical approach I used when building fraud cases for corporate clients. The key was identifying all stakeholders and understanding their vulnerabilities before taking action that would create maximum impact with minimal personal exposure. My first priority was contacting Sarah Chen, Jake's current fiancée who worked as a pediatric nurse at Phoenix Children's Hospital. Her social media showed a genuine, caring person who posted about her patients' recoveries and fundraising efforts for hospital equipment, completely unaware that her future husband was conducting business with questionable ethical boundaries while maintaining an intimate relationship with his ex-girlfriend. I reached out through LinkedIn with a professional message explaining that I had information about business activities that might affect her personally and professionally, requesting a private meeting to discuss details that required discretion. Sarah agreed to meet at a neutral location, and when I presented the evidence of Jake's involvement in Chen's parties and his ongoing relationship with Megan, her reaction was immediate and decisive. "I've been wondering why Jake's been so secretive about his new business connections," she said, reviewing the financial documents I'd compiled. "He claims these real estate deals are legitimate, but he won't let me attend any of his networking events, says they're boring business meetings that would waste my time." I showed her the photos from Chen's yacht parties, the payment records, and the recorded conversations between Jake and Megan. Sarah's nursing background made her naturally analytical, and she quickly understood the implications of what I'd discovered. "This isn't just cheating," she said quietly. "If these business deals involve environmental waivers and zoning exceptions that were obtained through questionable entertainment, Jake could face serious legal consequences." She agreed to help expose the situation, partly for personal reasons but mostly because her professional ethics wouldn't allow her to ignore potential illegal activities. Next, I contacted Marcus Rivera, a forensic accountant who'd worked with me on previous corporate fraud cases, and presented him with the financial evidence surrounding Chen's business operations. Marcus specialized in tracing money laundering schemes through legitimate business structures, and Chen's payment system immediately caught his attention. "This shell company arrangement is textbook money laundering," Marcus explained after reviewing the documents. "Using consulting fees to disguise payments for entertainment services, especially when those services involve influencing business decisions, crosses multiple legal boundaries. The IRS and FBI would be very interested in this information." I also discovered that Ashley's sudden lifestyle upgrade was funded through embezzlement from her employer, a medical billing company where she had access to client payment systems. Her Instagram posts showed expensive purchases that corresponded exactly with discrepancies in her company's accounts, discrepancies that became visible when I applied the same analytical techniques I used for corporate auditing. Ashley had been skimming small amounts from multiple client accounts, using her yacht party income to cover her tracks, but the pattern was detectable once you knew what to look for. The plan I developed was surgical and comprehensive. Sarah would confront Jake with the evidence while I simultaneously reported Chen's business activities to federal authorities, and Ashley's embezzlement would be reported to her employer and local law enforcement. Brittany's influencer career would collapse naturally once her association with illegal activities became public, and Caitlin would face consequences when her bank discovered she'd been receiving unreported income while applying for loans based on false financial statements. But the centerpiece of my response involved Megan returning home to find Sarah waiting in our condo with complete documentation of everyone's activities and legal consequences. I arranged for Sarah to be there when Megan returned, armed with divorce papers for Jake, eviction notices for Megan, and evidence that would make it impossible for any of them to deny their involvement or minimize the seriousness of their situation. The beauty of the plan was that I wouldn't need to confront anyone directly or engage in emotional dramatics that could be dismissed or manipulated. Instead, each person would face the natural consequences of their choices through appropriate legal and professional channels, while I maintained the moral high ground by working within legitimate systems to expose illegal activities. By Friday afternoon, everything was in motion. Federal authorities had been notified about Chen's business practices, Sarah had filed for dissolution of her engagement to Jake, Marcus had reported the financial irregularities to appropriate agencies, and I had documented evidence ready to present to anyone who tried to claim ignorance about the scope of the deception that had been happening under my nose for months. Saturday morning arrived with the precision of a carefully orchestrated corporate takedown, and I positioned myself in a hotel room across the complex with a clear view of our condo's security cameras, watching everything unfold through the surveillance system I'd installed months earlier for legitimate home security purposes. Sarah had arrived at 8 a.m. with a briefcase full of documentation, settling into our kitchen like she was conducting a business meeting, which in many ways she was. The printed evidence covered our dining table, financial transaction records, yacht party manifests, recorded conversation transcripts, photographs from social media posts, and legal documents that would change everyone's life permanently. When Megan's car pulled into the garage at 10:15 a.m., I watched through the security feed as she entered our condo expecting to find me waiting with questions she'd prepared answers for, instead discovering a composed stranger sitting at our kitchen table surrounded by evidence of her secret life. "Tyler's not here," Sarah said calmly as Megan froze in the doorway, "but I'm Sarah Chin, Jake's former fiancée, and we need to discuss your boyfriend's investigation into your business activities with my ex-fiancé and David Chin." The color drained from Megan's face as she recognized Sarah from Jake's social media posts, understanding immediately that her two separate lives had collided in the worst possible way. "I don't know what you're talking about," Megan said, setting down her overnight bag with hands that were visibly shaking. "Who gave you permission to be in Tyler's apartment?" "Tyler gave me permission because he's been investigating your yacht party attendance and your relationship with Jake for the past week. Sit down and look at this evidence before you say anything else you'll regret." Sarah gestured to the chair across from her with the professional calm of someone who'd spent years delivering difficult news to families in hospital settings. I watched Megan's face change as Sarah methodically presented each piece of evidence: the financial payments disguised as consulting fees, the photographs of her at Chen's parties, the recorded conversations with Jake about their future plans, the timeline showing how every girl's night corresponded with yacht events where she'd been paid to entertain Chen's business associates. "Tyler collected all of this?" Megan whispered, sinking into the chair as the scope of his investigation became clear. "Tyler's a cybersecurity specialist who investigates fraud for a living. Did you really think you could hide financial transactions and business relationships from someone whose job is detecting exactly that kind of deception?" Sarah slid the divorce papers across the table, papers that dissolved her engagement to Jake effective immediately. "Jake's been served with these papers this morning, along with notice that federal authorities are investigating Chen's business practices and anyone who received payments from his shell companies." Megan stared at the legal documents, her hands trembling as she realized the consequences extended far beyond personal betrayal. Federal authorities? Tyler contacted federal authorities. Money laundering, tax evasion, and using entertainment services to influence business decisions are federal crimes. Tyler documented everything properly and reported it through appropriate channels. Your consulting fees will need to be explained to IRS investigators, and your involvement in Jake's real estate presentations makes you potentially liable as an accessory to fraud. The words hit Megan like physical blows, each revelation expanding the scope of legal jeopardy she'd never considered when accepting Chen's payments. Sarah continued with clinical precision, explaining how Ashley's embezzlement had been reported to her employer and local police, how Brittany's association with illegal activities would destroy her influencer aspirations, and how Caitlin's unreported income violated her banking employment agreements and loan applications. "Tyler's not here because he doesn't want to witness your reaction to discovering that actions have consequences," Sarah said, gathering the papers as Megan sat in stunned silence. "He's arranged for you to be served with eviction papers tomorrow, giving you 30 days to find alternative living arrangements. All shared financial accounts have been frozen pending investigation of unreported income sources." The final blow came when Sarah revealed that Chen had been arrested Friday night on federal charges, his yacht seized as evidence, and his business operations shut down pending investigation. Jake's real estate company was under scrutiny for the environmental waivers obtained through questionable entertainment, and everyone who'd received payments through Chen's shell companies would be contacted by federal investigators within the week. "I have to pack my things and leave Phoenix," Sarah concluded, standing to go. "My nursing career requires clean background checks, and I can't be associated with Jake's business activities. But Tyler wanted you to know that he's not angry, just disappointed that you chose deception over honest conversation about whatever problems you thought you were solving by accepting money to attend parties with your ex-boyfriend." The security cameras captured Megan's complete breakdown as Sarah left, sitting alone in our kitchen surrounded by evidence of her secret life, finally understanding that Tyler's quiet acceptance of her communication blackout request hadn't been naive trust but strategic patience while he built an airtight case against everyone involved in deceiving him. The domino effect began within hours as my carefully documented evidence created consequences that rippled through everyone's life with the efficiency of a well-executed corporate fraud takedown. David Chen's arrest Friday night had been just the beginning. By Monday morning, federal agents were conducting raids on his business properties while forensic accountants traced every transaction through his shell company network, discovering tax evasion totaling over $2 million and money laundering operations that extended far beyond yacht parties. Jake's real estate empire collapsed Tuesday when his major investors discovered his connection to Chen's illegal activities and immediately withdrew funding from all current projects, leaving him personally liable for construction loans he couldn't cover and environmental violations that carried both criminal and civil penalties. His Henderson Resort project, the one he'd discussed with Meghan in their recorded conversations, was shut down permanently when investigators found that the environmental waivers had been obtained through bribing officials with entertainment provided by Chen's yacht parties. Ashley's embezzlement discovery triggered an immediate audit of her employer's client accounts, revealing she'd stolen over $40,000 across 18 months by skimming small amounts from medical billing payments, and her arrest Wednesday morning was followed by local news coverage that destroyed any remaining credibility she'd built in Phoenix's social circles. Britney's influencer career died instantly when her association with federal criminal investigations became public, her followers dropping from 12,000 to 800 within a week as brands canceled sponsorship deals and her content shifted from lifestyle posts to desperate damage control attempts that only highlighted her involvement in illegal activities. Caitlyn faced the most professional consequences since her banking job required clean background checks and financial transparency, and her termination Thursday was followed by loan default notices when the bank discovered she'd falsified income statements while receiving unreported payments from Chen's companies. The most satisfying element was watching Jake's engagement to Sarah dissolve publicly as she posted a single Facebook update explaining that she discovered his involvement in illegal business activities and couldn't maintain professional nursing credentials while associated with someone under federal investigation. His social media went dark immediately, but mutual friends reported he'd been forced to move back in with his parents after losing his downtown apartment and luxury car to creditors who were trying to recover losses from his failed business ventures. Meghan's situation became desperate quickly as she discovered that her association with the investigation made her unemployable in Phoenix's tight-knit professional community, and her attempts to find alternative housing were complicated by landlords who ran background checks that revealed her connection to federal criminal investigations. She tried calling me repeatedly, leaving voicemails that progressed from angry accusations about violating her privacy to tearful apologies about making mistakes, but I'd maintained complete silence while monitoring her situation through the same digital channels I'd used to expose her deception. The shared financial accounts I'd frozen contained over $8,000 in unreported income from Chen's companies, money that federal investigators ultimately seized as evidence of money laundering activities, leaving her with only her personal checking account that contained less than $400. By the end of the week, Ashley was in county jail awaiting trial for embezzlement. Britney had moved back to her parents' house in Tucson after her apartment lease was terminated, Caitlyn was working retail while trying to avoid bankruptcy, and Jake was facing federal charges that could result in prison time if prosecutors could prove he'd knowingly participated in Chen's money laundering scheme. The investigation had expanded beyond the yacht parties to include other businesses in Chen's network, creating a federal case that would take months to resolve but had already destroyed the social and professional lives of everyone who'd thought they were just attending exclusive parties while accepting easy money for minimal work. Meghan remained in our condo until the eviction deadline, packing her belongings while dealing with federal investigators who questioned her about the consulting fees she'd received and her knowledge of Chen's business operations. Interviews that made it clear she was considered a potential witness rather than a target but still faced tax liability for unreported income she'd spent instead of saving for legal consequences. 8 months later, I was standing in my new Seattle office overlooking Elliott Bay, reviewing case files for Tyler Chen Cybersecurity Solutions, the fraud investigation firm I'd launched after relocating across the country to start fresh in a city where nobody knew my story. The irony of sharing a last name with David Chen wasn't lost on me, but my company specialized in exactly the type of corporate fraud detection that had exposed his money laundering operation, and my reputation in the cybersecurity community had grown substantially after the Phoenix case became a textbook example of how digital forensics could uncover complex financial crimes. Sarah had moved to Seattle 2 months after me, accepting a position in the pediatric intensive care unit at Seattle Children's Hospital where her nursing skills were desperately needed and her background was evaluated based on professional competence rather than personal associations with criminal investigations. Our relationship had developed slowly and carefully, built on complete transparency about our past experiences and shared understanding of how betrayal could permanently change your approach to trust. But we discovered that surviving deception made us better partners because we valued honesty in ways that people who'd never been betrayed couldn't fully appreciate. The handwritten letter from Megan arrived through my lawyer's office in Phoenix, forwarded to Seattle with a note explaining that she'd specifically requested it be delivered through official channels to respect my desire for no direct contact. Her handwriting was smaller than I remembered, cramped and careful like someone who'd spent considerable time choosing each word precisely. Tyler, it began, I know I have no right to contact you after everything that happened, but I wanted you to understand what really occurred during those months when I was lying to you about the yacht parties and my relationship with Jake. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness or to justify my choices, because I understand now that some betrayals create permanent boundaries that apologies can't cross. I'm writing because you deserved the truth then, and you deserve it now, even though it comes too late to matter. She explained that the yacht parties had started innocently when Ashley met Chen at a networking event and was invited to what seemed like legitimate business gatherings where successful people discussed investment opportunities and professional development. The first few events had been exactly that, but gradually the expectations became clearer. Attractive women were expected to be charming and attentive to Chen's business associates, creating a comfortable social atmosphere that made potential investors more receptive to business proposals. The money felt like easy income for doing something I was already good at, being social and making people feel comfortable, she wrote. Ashley convinced us that we were providing valuable networking services, that successful businessmen paid for professional atmospheres the same way they paid for catering or venue rentals. It didn't feel like anything inappropriate because we weren't being asked to do anything beyond conversation and company. Her reconnection with Jake had happened at one of Chen's parties where he'd been presenting real estate investment opportunities to potential clients, and their renewed relationship had developed because they'd both been participating in what felt like legitimate business networking that gradually revealed its questionable nature. By the time I understood that Chen was using our presence to influence business decisions in ways that crossed legal boundaries, I was already receiving payments that I'd spent on expenses I couldn't otherwise afford, and Jake was already depending on the business relationships he'd built through Chen's network. We felt trapped between admitting we'd been naive about the situation or continuing to participate until we could find legitimate alternatives. The letter's most painful section addressed her behavior in our relationship during those months, acknowledging that her complaints about feeling controlled and suffocated had been manufactured to justify the distance she needed to maintain her secret activities. I created relationship problems that didn't exist because I needed excuses for the time I was spending away from home and the money I couldn't explain. When you asked reasonable questions about my schedule or activities, I turned them into arguments about independence because I needed you to stop asking questions I couldn't answer honestly. Your friends were right when they said you were supportive and encouraging. You never tried to control me. I just needed you to believe you were controlling so I could justify lying to you. She concluded by explaining that she'd moved to Portland, was working as a waitress while attending community college to learn bookkeeping, and was slowly paying back the taxes she owed on her unreported income from Chen's companies. I don't expect you to respond to this letter, and I'm not asking for any kind of reconciliation or forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that losing you was the worst consequence of my poor choices, worse than the legal problems or financial difficulties, because you were the only real thing in my life during those months when everything else was built on lies and deception. I hope you found someone who deserves your trust and loyalty, because I understand now how rare and valuable those qualities really are. I read the letter twice, then filed it away in my desk drawer next to the Phoenix case documentation that had launched my new career and brought me to Seattle, where I'd built a life protected by the digital security systems I'd designed and the emotional boundaries I'd learned to maintain. That evening, I showed the letter to Sarah as we prepared dinner in our shared apartment overlooking the Space Needle, a routine that had become comfortable and honest in ways my relationship with Megan never had been. "Do you think her apology is genuine?" Sarah asked after reading the letter carefully. "Probably," I said, "but that doesn't change anything. Some betrayals teach you exactly what you need to know about someone's character, and mine taught me that I deserved better than I'd been accepting." 6 months later, Sarah and I got engaged during a quiet dinner at home, and our wedding announcement mentioned only that we were both Phoenix transplants who'd found each other after surviving difficult previous relationships that had taught us to value transparency and mutual respect above all other relationship qualities.